Hey there, welcome back to Everything Dough. I'm Trudi Kayser with Life Made to Order Financial Phoenix, and this is Wealth Wednesday. Hey, before we dive in, if you're watching this and you want easy access to everything that I do, the newsletter, the website, ways to connect, local events, online events, classes, that sort of thing, there's a QR code right here. I don't know, maybe over here on your screen. Just point your phone camera at it and it'll take you straight there. Okay. So yesterday, Jen Stone and I sat down inside the Mom Nation AZ Facebook group, and we recorded our second episode of our podcast, Make Dollars Make Sense. And if you haven't listened to that yet, it drops Monday, the 11th. Go find it because it is a good one. There's also one from last month that's on the Mom Nation AZ group in Facebook, or you can also find it on YouTube. You can find it on my channel as well. Just scroll down to the saved playlist, saved videos. So inside this episode, we talked about something that most financial content completely skips over. It's like not budgets, not strategies, not rates of return, or anything like that. We talked about identity, specifically how you believe you are in relation to money and how that is quietly driving every financial decision you make, whether you realize it or not. And today I want to go deeper on that. So the LinkedIn newsletter that I published this week, it's, I think, available in like 45 minutes. It's early this morning on Wednesday morning. Issue number 13 of Dough, Discipline, and Wealth goes right into the heart of this conversation. And this is kind of like a recorded version of that newsletter. So think of this video as a deeper dive. The podcast is the conversation, the newsletter is the framework, and this today is where we really get into it. So let's go. I'm going to say something that might sting a little, not because I want it to, but because I've lived it. And I'm just sharing my story. And nobody ever said this to me clearly enough, early enough. I found it a long time ago. And when I first started this business, and I've been working on it ever since, but I realized that most financial struggles aren't really about money. It's about who you believe you are in relation to money. And that's the conversation that most financial content skips entirely. A lot of us talk about budgets, and we've talked about that, spending plans, strategies, rates of returns, and retirement deadlines. All of that matters. It really does. But none of it really sticks if the identity underneath hasn't shifted. And so there's a pattern. I like to weave in a little bit of sourdough baking. And there is this pattern that I've noticed in sourdough baking all of these years that is also in people's financial lives. Someone learns the process, like they go to one of our classes and they learn, and then they understand the steps, right? The step one is to peel back this and do this and save and do all the things. And then they have the ingredients, right? Because I've taught sourdough classes before. And I always tell people, if you don't bake within a week of learning this class, you're probably not going to. And what that means is they have all the ingredients, they have all the stuff. And then right before the loaf is ready, they rush it. They pull it from the oven too soon, or they overproof it, or they find a reason, or they underproof it because they're rushing, or they find a reason to start over instead of finishing. I'm pretty sure I did that with my first 25 loaves. I literally like swept off the dough into the trash can because I thought I'd already screwed it up. And it wasn't because I didn't know better. It's just something in them and me at that time wasn't quite ready to succeed yet. And financial self-sabotage works exactly the same way. People, you really know what to do. We really, really do know what to do and don't do. And you aren't lazy. You're not irresponsible. These people, and we're operating from an identity that hasn't caught up to the knowledge yet. And so knowledge without identity, shift, not shift, produces information, not transformation. So here's when financial stress becomes a part of who you are, here's something worth sitting with. If you grew up in a household where money was always tight, always stressful, always the source of attention, and this doesn't mean that you were broke. This could also be in a very wealthy household as well. Your nervous system learned something. It learned that this is what money is supposed to feel like. And over time, that feeling became familiar, and familiar became comfortable. We've all heard this, right? And that comfortableness, is that a word? We're going to go with it, became your identity when it comes to money. So when you're an adult and things start to stabilize, like when your account has a buffer, when your bills are paid, you got some money in savings, and there's actually some breathing room, something quietly uncomfortable happens. It doesn't feel like relief. It feels like, I don't know, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, this can't last. These are things that go through, something is going to go wrong. I don't deserve this yet. And sometimes unconsciously, invisibly, people make decisions that return them to the familiar ground, the comfortableness. They'll an unnecessary purchase. I cannot tell you how many times I've done this and didn't recognize, like, why did I do that? A missed contribution, a strategy left in place that they know isn't serving them anymore. And it's not because they're broken. It's because the identity hasn't been updated yet. Financial stress for a lot of people, it's not a circumstances. It's just self-concept. And you cannot budget or spend your way out of a self-concept. So here's the difference between managing money and worrying about money. And these two things look similar from the outside, but they are completely different on the inside. Managing money looks like reviewing your accounts with intention, making decisions from a plan. I could say just making decisions in general, adjusting when life changes, protecting what you're building, feeling informed without feeling consumed by it. Also, have an allocation system, right? You're allocating money instead of spending money. A lot of people think saving is spending, but it's not. It's just allocating, reallocating the money. And then worrying about money looks like checking balances from anxiety, paying bills with a bad attitude, avoiding statements because they feel like bad news, making impulsive decisions to relieve discomfort, carrying the weight of it all quietly every single day. One of these is a financial practice. That's the money management. And the other is an identity, and that's the worrying about money. And the exhausting truth is that a lot of responsible, hardworking, intelligent people are living in the second category, not because they lack discipline, but because they've just never been given permission to operate from the first one. And they go back to that comfortability of the financial struggle. And so discipline is not the absence of struggle, by the way. It's the decision to respond to money from intention instead of emotion. And that shift doesn't come from a better app or a stricter budget or a spreadsheet. It just comes from deciding slowly, deliberately who you are in relation to money. Please know that self-worth is a financial strategy. I think this might be the most important thing I'll say in this entire video. Your financial standards will rarely exceed your self-worth, what you think your self-worth is. So think about that for a moment. The rates that you accept, the opportunities that you pursue or don't, are those opportunities down here or are they up here? The protection that you put in place or keep putting off, the income that you allow yourself to earn, putting caps on yourself, the retirement that you believe you deserve or don't. And all of it quietly, invisibly is filtered through what you believe you're worth. And people who feel fundamentally undeserving of stability will always find ways to remain unstable. Not consciously, not dramatically, just quietly, unconsciously, through the accumulation of small little decisions that keep them right where their identity expects them to be. And people who have done the inner work of deciding they are worth protecting, worth planning for, worth investing in, those people build differently, not because they have more money. Let me be clear on that, not because they have more money, but because they have different relationships with themselves. And therefore, they have a different relationship with money. I've watched this play out in client conversations more times than I can count. I've watched it play out in the mirror. Someone understands the strategy completely. They nod, they agree, they see the value, and then they don't move forward. Not because of the cost, but because somewhere underneath the conversation is a belief that says, people like me don't do things like this. I heard growing up a lot, we're not like those people, right? So the belief is the real barrier, not the budget. Let me remind you that structure isn't a cage. It's not a cage. It's a container that lets you rise. So back to the dough. A sourdough loaf needs a container during its final proof, a banneton, a bowl, a form of some kind, not to restrict the dough, but to give it something to rise against. And without that structure, the dough just spreads out. It loses its shape. It can't hold what it's been building. And financial structure works the same way. A budget isn't punishment. I like to call them spending plans, but it's not punishment. A protection strategy isn't pessimism, and a retirement plan isn't something you do when you're old enough to care. They're these are the containers that let everything you're building hold its shape so that when life applies heat, you don't collapse. Freedom doesn't come from having no structure. It comes from having structure that works so well you stop thinking about it. That's when money stops consuming your thoughts. That's when financial peace becomes something you actually feel, not just something you're chasing. So, how does this identity actually change? That's the $100,000 question, right? I want to be honest about this because it doesn't happen the way most people think overnight. That'd be nice, right? Identity doesn't shift because, I don't know, you read the right book or attend the right seminar or finally made enough money. That's what I thought for a very long time. I just need to make more money, right? It shifts through repeated decisions that are slightly ahead of where you currently are. You make the contribution before you feel ready. You put the protection in place before you think you need it. You review your finances before you feel comfortable doing it. You say yes to the conversation before you feel deserving of the outcome. And over time, slowly and quietly, those decisions become evidence. And that evidence rewrites your story. Maybe I am someone who handles money this way. Maybe stability is something I'm allowed to have. Maybe the peace I keep waiting to feel is actually available right now. That's the work. It's not dramatic and it doesn't happen in a single conversation or a single decision, but it does happen. I've watched it happen. I've lived it happen. And it always starts the same way with someone deciding their financial identity is worth examining. So here's your takeaway. You don't have a money problem. You have a relationship with money that was shaped by experiences, environments, and beliefs that may no longer be true for you. The strategies matter, the structure matters, the protection matters, but underneath all of that, quietly holding up everything or quietly putting everything down is identity. And identity is always worth examining. I'm going to leave you with a question. If money had nothing to do with numbers, if you could only describe your relationship with it emotionally, what word would you use? Drop it down in the comments. No explanation needed, no judgment, no, guilt or shame about feeling it, just the word. And then observe that word, observe that feeling, observe, because that is awareness, my friend. And awareness is the very first step to getting through to a different identity when it comes to money. So if this resonated, this kind of conversation, the one that sits underneath the spreadsheets and the strategies, that's what I do. And if you're ready to look at both the structure and the story, I'd love to connect. I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to hear your money story. So whether that's a conversation about financial education, a review of your current plans, doing that before you feel ready, that's really the first step. Or just clarity around what's actually available to you. I'm here. I hope you all have a fabulous Wealth Wednesday, and I will see you on Financial Freedom Friday.